Hello, my little yarnivores, Fiber Spider back again. Yes, I have a face, and here it is. The reason why I'm showing you moi is because this tutorial is going to be for another shawl. For those of you that have been following me know that I've been doing a number of shawls lately, and this one is a little bit different, using a very simple means of achieving the end product. But to do it proper justice, I decided that I would model it for you. A little embarrassing, but what can you do? All right, so, all right, this is a pattern of my own design, and this I call the Wrap Yourself in Love shawl, and I will show you why in just a moment. So, as you can see, it's got these lovely lapels going on. So you have a nice amount for the front. You got some corners going down here, and it lays flat in the back. Your arms are free, and this would be great to wear with a coat over it. You could pin it, make use of those nice brooches that you have, and I really like this. Now, yes, this is obviously asymmetrical. I used Caron cakes. Yes, you know I love that yarn oh so much. And this was done, I believe, with one skein of Caron cakes. And you might want to get two just to be on the safe side. So I'm going to stop the camera and I'm going to show you what it looks like laid out. But I thought to do it only proper justice that I would show you what it looks like, because I love the drape and the functionality, the lapels, love it. So at any rate, let's get into it. Okay, so this is, as you can see, why it is so asymmetrical, because since I was using just, the one skein, and I was not going for, actual concern as to how my colors fell, this is the result. However, if you're going for a funky, asymmetrical kind of look, then by all means, go for it. For the project we are going to be doing today, it's going to be much more uniform, and I will show you. So, as you can see, it is basically a granny square format, 3 granny squares. And I do have tutorials on how to make granny squares, how to join them, and I'm going to put links in the description box on how you can do that. And so bear with me and I'll show you the piece that we're going to be working on today. All right. Okay, so as you can see, this piece that we're going to be working on today, it has a lot more uniformity to it. It's all done with the same yarn, and it's going to look more cohesive. This could be construed as bland to some, but you know what? I think that the piece speaks for itself. Now, the yarn that I used for this is Caron Simply Soft Paints. And if you want to get this yourself, it is Rose Garden. Now, I used actually just about 1 skein per square, with just this much left over. And I bought a total of 4 skeins, so I hope it's going to be enough. So now what we're going to do is we are going to stitch around the perimeter to make the points less pointy, okay? And so it is a bit more heart shape. I know this is a fairly cubist looking heart, but we're going to round those points out just a little bit. And when we start, pardon me, ooh, sorry, I'm not used to the whole handheld thing. So when we start, actually, we're going to be starting in this corner right here on this side. Also, as far as the square sizes that you will need, you're going to want to do 14 rounds in total per block, okay? So what you are going to want to do in order to join them is you do 1 block in its entirety of 14 rounds. Then when you're doing your second block, on the 14th round, that is when you join 1 block to the other block. And then on the 14th round of this block, that is the round in which you're joining this one to this one. The order in which you do it really doesn't matter, just so long as on each block has 14 rounds total, okay? That's just to clarify. I don't think that it's necessary to do an entire tutorial on how to do granny square blocks because, like I said, I'll post the links to the other videos I have on how to make granny squares and how to join them, and that should definitely guide you through it. If you, of course, have any questions, don't hesitate to ask. You know I'm there for you. And so, like I said, we're going to be starting in this corner here when we're going to be going around and around and around. All right, so let's get into it, shall we? Okay, back again. All right, so here is the divot of that V, and then we are on to the side over here like I showed before. Now I'm going to be using a size I crochet hook. There we go. Size I crochet hook, and yes, we're going to be starting right into where this seam is, and we are going to be building up our piece such that the corners are a bit more rounded. Now, by all means, if you can figure out a way of making them look more rounded, more power to you, you know? I mean, this is a pattern of my own design, my own creation, and I thought, hey, I'll give it a try, you know? Why not? So, what we are going to do is see, this is where we have our join. 1 square, 2 square. So into our join here, insert your hook and pull up a loop. And so we want our first cluster to be in here. So we're going to create a bit of a bridge. So we are going to chain 3 chains, okay, in total. And then we're going to work into this cluster with, the typical granny cluster of 3 double crochets, as per usual, nothing new there. And then you chain 1, go into the next chain 1 space with 3 double crochets. This is, for the most part, I would say, going to be old hat for anybody that has gotten this far with doing grannies. This aspect of it is pretty run-of-the-mill at this point. If you made the 3 granny squares from the get-go, it's going to seem pretty self-explanatory. It's just when we hit those corners, that's where we really need to pay attention. And, well, the reason why I was inspired to create this shawl is because Valentine's Day is approaching, and I was thinking, a shawl is essentially a triangular shape. And if you look at it, so is a heart. A heart is essentially, a point at the bottom, triangular-ish shape. And then I thought to myself, those bumps could be functional. Those bumps at the top of the heart, they could be, in fact, functional. So, that being said, I sought upon trying to come across different ideas as far as how could I bring this about. And I had many failed attempts. I had been working on it for quite some time before I hit upon this, which seemed that, as far as the base of the piece, the 3 granny squares, okay, that's relatively straightforward and relatively simplistic. Then I figured, with a little bit of polish, it could be more heart shape. And I was thinking, with Valentine's Day coming around the corner, wrap yourself in love. It's a big heart, you know? And yes, in case if you didn't catch the reference, each square is 14 rounds, February 14th. I know it's a little hallmarky, but, you know, I figured, why not, you know? So we're just working our way all the way around with just doing these clusters. Now, we're almost to the corner point, and we're going to be doing the same thing with all of the points. You know, every time you hit a point, pardon me, you're going to be doing the same thing each time. So that too will make it a little bit easier, because I wanted this to be a pattern that would be accessible and comprehensible to more than just a select few. You know, I figure that crocheting should be ultimately something that everybody can be able to do. You know, so try to make it easy enough, you know, interesting enough yet easy enough. All right, so we are just about there. Okay, see, here we have our corner. Now, instead of doing our typical corner, which would be into the corner, it would be a cluster of 3, chain 2, cluster of 3. Well, here's where it differs, okay? In order to try to round this out more, we're going to be just doing 1 cluster of 3 in here. Now, in order to have this lay flat, okay, we need to compensate for the distance to bridge the gap. So instead of doing 1 chain in between, you're going to chain 2 and then do a single cluster of 3 double crochets into the corner here. And then chain 2 again. And then continue to work down this side. See, that's the thing. I really wanted to make it as easy and as accessible as possible. All right, see, it already has a less pointed and more rounded appearance. Okay, so I'm going to continue on until I reach my next point, and we will go from there. Okay, so we started down here, we bridged the gap, we worked all the way up, slightly rounded the corner over here, and this is the top point here. And we're going to be doing, as I said, we're going to be doing the same thing up here as well, where we are going to chain 2, make a single cluster into the top here, this top point. And also the other thing that I like about this is that symmetry is involved. You know, so what you're doing with one side, you're going to be doing to the other, so it makes it more difficult to actually get lost in this process. So we chain 2, did the single cluster, chain 2 again, and then do a cluster into the next chain 1 space. And then we are going to contend with the divot of the heart, which was another thing that I had to figure out, because you don't want this to be too warbly. You know, if you want it to lay flat, you want it to lay flat, you know, and I respect that. So again, it was a matter of fiddling with the pattern over and over and over, and I did tons of frogging. with my work, let me tell you. But as I always say, I am persistent, and I can appreciate persistence in others because that is how we get where we want to be. Also, another thing about this yarn, I love the softness of this. The, what is it called again? The Caron Simply Soft Paints. Now, I've had the same sort of issue with working with the Caron Simply Soft in general, that the plies split, and that it is very easy to get your hook in between the plies and to not catch all of the plies while working with it. That is the nature of the beast with this particular yarn. So it can be a little bit frustrating. I mean, the feel of the yarn, don't get me wrong, I love the softness. I love the sheen. I love the feel. However, yes, that can be a bit of a, as you can see, a bit of a stumbling block, especially if you want to work cleanly and quickly. It can be rather frustrating. When I was working with the Caron cakes, doing this project as well as many others, I have never had that problem, never had that issue. The plies are always very cohesive and they stay together just fine. So there is, however, of course, the trade-off that the piece will not be symmetrical unless if you plot out your piece just so. So I'm going to keep stitching, and then when I reach the divot over here, we will start up again. Alrighty. Okie dokie, so I am just about into the corner. So here is the center piece here, okay, and then here is my block on the side, here's my other block on the side, and it may be a little tricky to see, but here and here, okay, is the joining. These two lines here, that's where the blocks were joined. So now we're not going to be going into this center block here. This is actually the corner of that center block. We are going to be basically diverting our stitches. So here is the corner of the block that we've been working on. So we are going to do a cluster into that corner of, again, yes, the 3 double crochets. And then we are going to bypass that middle square entirely. And we are going to go into the corner of the other square. Now, you don't want to chain 1 in between these 2 clusters. Also, you want to keep the connection between the groups of clusters to be nice and tight, okay? So we're going to be going into this space here with another cluster of 3 double crochets. So again, you're not chaining. And you do a total of 3 double crochets, chain 1, and then you just keep going up the side of the square on the left-hand side. And then when you reach the corners, again, you would chain 2, do a single cluster, chain 2, and then proceed down the side yet to come. And you're going to keep doing that for those next 2 points. Let me stop here. So, working your way up this side, And then, so yes, when you reach this point, you got a cluster, chain 2, single cluster, chain 2, single cluster, and then you work your way to this point, same difference, and then you're going to be reaching the join yet again. So I'm going to meet back up with you when we're up to this join here, okay? See you in a bit. Okay, so as you can see, we are quickly approaching the opposite join of where we initially started. And I'm going to do another one of our illustrious clusters. Okay, almost there. Okay, so now this is where the join is, and we're going to need to anchor again. So we are going to chain 3, and then do a slip stitch. Actually, I think I'm going to do a slip stitch in between the two. There we are. So we've got our chain to anchor and a slip stitch. Then we are going to turn our work. It's a little tricky to do this in such close proximity to the camera, but I'm doing the best I can for you. Okay, so then we did our slip stitch, and we do a chain 1. Makes it a little bit easier to do this next step. We are going to actually slip stitch along underneath this chain that we just created. To bring things up a little bit. So I did 2 slip stitches carrying it along this edge here, and then we do another slip stitch into the first double crochet stitch up here. Be sure to go through both of those legs there, the entire V. Then we are going to chain up again. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then into this first space here, we are going to resume with our clusters of 3 double crochets, chain 1, 3 double crochets, chain 1, etc., etc., until we reach the next point. And that again is where things slightly change, because we have to compensate and adjust for making our points rounded. All right, so I'm going to continue along doing my clusters of 3, chain 1, clusters of 3, chain 1, all the way around. So as you can see, the edge here is going to slightly go up. It's not abrupt and jarring. It goes up in a nice angle. Okay, so continue along until you reach the first corner. All right, meet back up with you in a bit. Okie dokie. So now we are approaching again our point here. Last time we did a chain 2, single cluster, chain 2. So now keeping in line with that, all right, now I haven't actually gone into this space yet because this is again where we need to do some compensation. So what we're going to do is we are going to start with a chain 2, then going into here we do a single cluster, And then to do the wraparound, we're going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Then go into this chain 2 space with another cluster. And then chain 2 again. And then go into the next chain 1 space with another cluster. Pardon me, I'm losing my voice. Ooh, okay, so now to recap. Okay, so this was our previous row. So approaching, we have, so here's the center point right here. So we have chain 2, single cluster, chain 3 going over that single cluster, another cluster, a chain 2, and then along this side here, we continue along on our merry way of doing a cluster of 3, chain 1, cluster of 3, chain 1, and then when we get around to this point, we're going to do very much the same thing, where into this space here, we do a regular cluster, then going across here, so we have a cluster of 3, so then we chain 2 across to here, do a cluster, chain 3 across this center one here, cluster into here, chain 2, and then cluster into here. And then we are going to get back to our divot. This was the divot that we had, and I will meet back up with you when we reach the divot. But I think that you can manage the next point. Just remember, like I said, I'm not trying to be too verbose. I'm not trying to bore you with being all wordy, but I just, I want to make this clear. Chain 2, cluster, chain 3, cluster, chain 2. So think down here, it was chain 2, chain 2. Up here, chain 2, chain 2, chain 3. So 2, 3, 2. Down here, it was 2, 2. And it's going to keep growing as we move up. So, do this corner, do the next corner in the same fashion as this corner, and I will meet back up with you when we reach the divot. Okay, so I hope you've been coming along nicely. Now, all right, we have reached the divot once again, and so we're going to be doing very similarly, say that 5 times fast, to the round that we had done before. So we're going to be going into this space here and this space here, leaving the center alone. And this is going to give it a little bit of pucker in the divot. So chaining 1, going into this space over here with our typical cluster of 3 double crochets. I tell you, after doing this, you will be able to do a cluster of 3 in your sleep. Okay, and then again, we do not chain. We're just going to go straight into the next chain 1 space with a cluster of 3. Alrighty. And that is really how we're going to treat the divot every time we reach it from here on in. So, just to give you an idea, let me just finish up this next one. And I will show you what I'm going to show you. Because if nothing else, I just want this whole process to make sense. Okay, so right down here, this was the initial corner of the middle square. And then last round we did these two here, and then this one we did these two up here. So then in the next round, again, it's going to be this space here and this space here, joining them together. So it's a cluster, no chain in between. And that's really how you treat this divot here, okay? So again, going to do, travel along and get up to here again. So again, it is chaining 2 across this bridge here, cluster. Chaining 3 across this bridge here, cluster. Chaining 2 across this bridge, cluster, etc., until you reach that beginning edge again, okay? All right, so continue on. I know you can do it. I've got faith in you. And I'll meet back up with you when we're ready to start the next pass. Okay, back in a bit. Alrighty, so back again, almost just about to where we first started our venture of rounding off the corners. All right, so here is where we did the bridge, okay, and I'm quickly approaching that same spot. So going to do my cluster into this space here. And then going to bridge the gap once more, dear friends. Okay, so we're again going to create a bridge, but from here down into here. So we're going to chain 1, 2, 3, okay, and then slip stitch into this bridge space here. Come on. Yep, this yarn splitting really is a bit annoying, but I persevere. Come on. There we go. Okay. And this, of course, this initial tail end, we can deal with later. Not to worry. All right, so we've created yet another bridge. Bridge 1, bridge 2. Okay, so again, we chain up 1. We turn our work. Work turned. Okay. And then we are going to slip stitch along this chain edge. Twice. I rest my case. The yarn splitting, ugh, it is annoying, but it is a lovely yarn. I will give it that. It is definitely a very lovely texture, lovely colorway. It's just the functionality of the yarn is a bit on the disagreeable side. But, there are prices to be paid for getting what we want. All right. So, Ha, I got it. Okay. Sorry about that, folks. Okay, so again, as we did before, we are going to slip stitch into that the top of that first double crochet there. And then we chain up again. 1, 1, 2, 3, and proceed to do into this first chain 1 space another cluster. Okay, just like we did previously, etc., etc. All right, so now what we're going to do is proceed along the length here until we reach the corner once again. And I will meet back up with you when I hit my corner, and we will go from there. Alrighty, so, proceed, cluster of 3, chain 1, cluster of 3, chain 1, until you hit the corner, and meet back up with you. All right, back in a bit. All right, so we are approaching our corner once more. So, all right, here is where we have our chain of 3. Here's where we have our chain of 2. And we are quickly approaching, aren't we? All right, so I stopped here because right now I'm going to do a chain of 2 into here. Well, you'll see what I mean. Chaining of 2. And then go into this 2 chain space with my cluster of 3. 1, 2, 3. So we get a chain 2, cluster, then we chain 3, do our single cluster, chain 3 again, cluster into that chain 2 space, and chain 2. Cluster of 3 into that chain 1 space. Okay, so again, as you can see, the way that it grows exponentially, because it's not the easiest of things, but we are trying to create a rounded curvature here, okay? And so down here, like I said before, we had a chain 2 space on either side. Then up here, it's a chain 2 space with a chain 3 space. Now it is 2 chain 2 spaces and 2 chain 3 spaces. It's all about symmetry and growing outwards. Okie doke. So, what I want you to do now, you guessed it, is to do your remaining corners. You've got the next one coming up, you've got your divot going on, and then you have 2 more corners, and then you have the end of this row. It's not quite a round, it's a row. All right, so remember, when you are approaching the corner, as it were, chain 2, chain 3, chain 3, chain 2. Okay, and I will meet back up with you at the end of the row. All right, and on to the next section. Okay, so we are back to where we need to do yet another bridge. So I did my last cluster of 3 here. Going to chain 3 and do a slip stitch within this last bridge. Chain up 1. Alrighty. And then, you guessed it, we turn our work one last time. Yeah, because this is the final pass. Alrighty, so we slip stitch 2, within this gap here, slip stitch into that double crochet stitch, that first one. There we go. And we chain up 3. And then we proceed to do our clusters of 3 clusters, chain 1, 3 clusters, the 3 cluster of double crochets, etc., etc. Again, like, I know I must sound like a broken record, but it's all about simplicity, really. And so just continue on like this until, of course, we reach our next corner, and then I will guide you through that process with the corner, and then we will be able to finish off our shawl. All right, so I'll meet up with you when I reach the corner, and see you in a bit. Okie dokie, so we are quickly approaching our corner. So here is the actual center here. Okay, so we have our cluster of 3, we have our chain of 3, cluster of 3, chain 2, okay, and I'm right over here, all right, as you can see. So what we're going to do is we are going to bridge the gap going across here. So we have our chain of 2 here, so we're going to chain 2, go into that chain 2 with a cluster of 3, all right, so we chain 2, so now we have to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. Go into the 3 chain with a cluster. Alrighty. And then over the direct center, we are going to chain 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Do another cluster of 3. And so we did chaining of 2, chaining of 3, chaining of 4. So we go backwards now. Going to do a chain of 3. 1, 2, 3. Do our cluster. And then we do a chain 2 and do a cluster. And then a chain 1. Do a cluster. Okay, so I'm going to continue on with the cluster of 3, chain 1, cluster of 3, chain 1, until we reach the corner again. So right here is our chain of 2. So we got a chain of 1, chain of 2. So going to do a regular cluster in here, chaining of 2 over to the chain of 2. Then when we're in the space, we do a cluster, chain of 3 over into here. And we're doing a cluster in here, and we do a chain of 4 over the exact top here. And then, so it's 2, 3, 4, 3, 2. And then you reach the divot, and then you do the exact same thing over again. So just keep that in mind. So as you can see, let me back up a little here. As you can see, it really does produce a nice rounded corner. Now, granted, I know that it does not exactly make the sides puffy. They're still flat, but it does create a nice curvature. That's really what I was after, so that it wasn't quite so blocky, And yes, albeit granted, when you lay it out flat, does it look like a heart? If you squint, I mean, I'm not, being delusional here. It does not make a perfect heart. However, to me, it does symbolize and represent a heart, and that's what matters. To me, that is ultimately what counts. And also, when you do wear it, as I showed before, it does have those really awesome lapels, and that's also what I was really going for. Some different shapes, some drapage. I really do like it. But, how often do you lay out your shawl flat and be like, that doesn't quite look exactly like a heart? To me, it's more of the symbolism behind it, and that's what's more important to me. Agree, disagree, that's totally up to you, but, I'm going with it, and I'm sticking to it. So listen, as I said, do the 2, 3, 4, 3, 2 on your corners, and then meet back up with me at the end where we reach our bridge once more. And oh, I'm so excited, we're almost there. All right, keep stitching. I'll see you in a bit. Okay, so we are quickly approaching the end. So I had to change my yarn up here, hence the tails, and here's my bridge. So we're going to, again, chain 3 and slip stitch into the bridge. And that's it. Well, that is really it as far as, the round is concerned. Now, going to actually, sorry, before we turn our work, we are going to chain up 3. 1, 2, 3. Then we turn our work. And now we are going to be doing the border all the way around the entire piece. Okay, so we chained up 3. Now, for our bridges, we have 3 chains, correct? So what you're going to want to do is 3 double crochets within that chain 3 space. 1 stitch per stitch. And that's really how you're going to be going and doing this all the way around. So see, we've got 3 double crochets right here going into the actual V's of the stitches. Do a double crochet each. And then, so we have a chain 1 space. So you'll do a double crochet into that space. And so we have, again, our 3 double crochets. So you do a double crochet into each of those double crochets. And be very careful not to miss any, because if you do, your edging, your border could buckle, and that is what we're trying to prevent. So really, quite simply, it's really just a matter of doing 1 stitch per stitch. So see down here, we have another chain 3. So we would do 3 double crochets in that chain space. And in these spaces as well, you would do, your double crochets, etc., so on and so forth. Now, when you get up to the corners, I will show you what to do. Be right back. Alrighty, so I'm at my corners. So here is my chain 2 space, right? So, because it's 2 chains, you do 2 double crochets within that space. Makes sense, right? And then 1 double crochet each for 3 double crochets. Again, straightforward, right? So this is our chain 3 space. So yes, you guessed it, 3 double crochets. Just scooting right along. Alrighty, see, we got our 3 in there. And then 1 in each. All right, now, because this is the actual corner here, and we have 4 chains, we are actually going to do 5 double crochets, just so that it has 1 more to give it a bit more body. So that's 3, 4, and I believe this is 5, yes. Yep. All right. And so that's the actual corner. The corner. And then so it's 3 double crochets as per usual. No big shock there. And then because this is the 3 space, 3 double crochets, 3 regular ones, 2 double crochets within the chain space of 2 there, and then so on and so forth, okay? And then I will meet back up with you when we hit the divot, okay? All right, so we have reached the divot, the ditch, whatever you want to call it, of our heart. And because we want to maintain the divot shape as opposed to the corners where we add a stitch, we're not adding any stitches to our divot. We're just going 1 stitch in each stitch. So just going to continue on doing 1 in here. And then these right across. Now again, nice and simple, really easy. And clean looking. All right. So there is our ditch. See, right in here. Okay, so continue all the way around until you reach the very end. Can't wait to see you there. Be back in a bit. Okie dokie. So now, just as a little word for you. Now, in the very tip, the bottom tip of the heart, where you have that chain 2 space, because that's the corner of the bottom, I did 3 double crochets into that bottom corner. Again, to increase it, just like we did on the other corners, we would increase by 1. So into that chain 2 space, you do 3 double crochets, and then I worked my way along, and going up the, excuse me, going up the bridges here, I did 3 double crochets into each bridge. Nice compensation there. And then, we're there! Oh, it's so exciting. All right, so I did my last double crochet, and then into the third chain of that chain 3, we're going to do a slip stitch. Sorry for the lack of focus there. Camera has a mind of its own. All right, so into there we do our slip stitch. Yes, yes, yes. And then, guess what, folks? We are done. Shaboom. I am so excited. Can't believe that I finally finished this thing because I've been putting it off and, well, I can only put it off for so long, right? So, all right. And there we go. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to sew in my ends, which I have plenty, and I'm going to show you the finished product. All right. Be back soon. Hi again. So I finished, as you can see. So we've got our lovely lapels, and you can pin it in the front. And so where the two squares meet on the side, that's where you want to have your arm. And it lays flat in the back. And yes, this is, as you can see, a much more conservative approach to this shawl as opposed to the Caron cakes. Now, of course, I love the vibrant colors of the Caron cakes, but this, like I said, it's more conservative and it's still elegant at the same time. So listen, I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial as much as I did making it. And it is just in time for Valentine's Day, being as this is late January as I'm posting this. And I really would like to see you give this a try, and I really hope that you enjoyed this. And if you like, you can follow me on Instagram at FiberSpider, same way that it's spelled for my channel. And would love to see your pictures, naturally. And if you have any comments, questions, suggestions, hey, I'm all ears. And if you like the video, hit like. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe. And until next time, keep inspired, keep caffeinated, and keep stitching. You have a great, great day, and I'll see you soon. Bye now.